Welcome to our first show of the new year here on your hometown station, AM 1220 and 98.1 FM. I hope all of you had a great holiday season celebrating the birth of our Savior and getting together with family and friends. Hopefully there was more fellowship as opposed to arguments and intramural squabbling. But we had a great time. We stayed home on Christmas, and then we did a little bit of traveling a few days later and got to see some family and friends and got to upload some of those photos. So, yeah, it's always good to see some folks you don't normally see. But it is good to be back today. It is a heavy news day. If you are listening here in Southern California, which most of you are, it's raining. And if you are listening to the news, it sounds like the end of the world is going to happen with a, quote, they're calling it every apocalyptic name for a weather storm you can possibly find. Now, 15 years ago, we would have just called this rain in the winter. But now there are all kinds of terms for this today. But of course, we live in the age of green energy, and the world's coming to an end with our weather. So we've got to be real dramatic about that. But nevertheless, it's raining outside, and I guess for the next couple of days, it's going to be pretty wet around here, which I thought was a good thing for Southern California, considering that we're in a drought. I'm starting to hear people saying that the rain itself may not be all that good. But yet, at the same time, they're defeatist people anyway, so it's bad if it rains, it's bad if it doesn't rain. So technically, they win either way in their wicked world scheme. Anyway, for those of you that know Matt, he's our board operator here at KHTS. He's got a show each Thursday at 12 p.m. called Out of Bounds. And I'll be bringing him in here in a second to talk a little bit about what does an Italian do for Christmas. So, Matt, explain to the people what an Italian does for Christmas.
Well, a lot. It's different for the men and the women. The women obviously shave their very hairy arms.
Yes.
And
they put it in the spaghetti.
Exactly. They get it all together. The men have the chest hair. We get that out. That's the olive oil for the cooking.
Exactly.
For the cutlets, pasta.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, it's actually very similar to what you might have done for your Christmas. We got together with some family, just had food all day, watched some football that was on, and It was very, very nice to just be relaxed and hanging out with everybody.
And did you get everything that Matt wanted for Christmas?
Santa was great to me.
Okay.
Yeah.
What'd you get? Give us at least one thing that was good.
I think my favorite thing was spending time with my family.
Oh, that is so trite.
All right, fine. You really want to know? I got a bike without training wheels.
Oh, that's good. Well,
Yeah.
that's great. That's good to know. At least you can stay out of bounds with all that kind of stuff.
Yes.
So anyway, if you're interested in listening to Matt, again, every Thursday here on KHTS, Out of Bounds, 12 o'clock. Listen to the Italian Stallion as he meanders his way through the world of sports. And we're going to bring Matt back in a little bit later to talk a little bit about the football injury on Monday and the current status of that individual that's in the hospital today. According to what I've heard, his stats are getting better and better. His vitals are getting better and better. So, but nevertheless, here we are on the first show of 2023, and in the spirit of Matt's show, Out of Bounds, let me put it to you this way. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 strikes, you're out? Well, in baseball, it's 3 strikes, you're out. But Kevin McCarthy is trying to win over 14 to 20 Republicans who seem to be not budging from voting for new leadership, or in the least, somebody other than Kevin McCarthy. Personally, I am not sure where I fall on all of this, because depending on who you listen to, you'll get a particular opinion or a particular slant. For instance, Dan Bongino, if you listen to him, he's all for what's happening with the 15 to 20 Republicans that are kind of the holdouts. Same thing with Sebastian Gorka and a few others. But then if you listen to guys like Mark Levin, he's on the other side of this. And that's not to suggest that Mark Levin is a big Kevin McCarthy fan, but I think what Mark Levin wants is for the Republicans to actually govern and actually have a speaker. So I am personally not sure where I fall on all of this. I see positives and I see negatives on both sides here. On the one hand, I thoroughly enjoy the debate and the deliberative process being done in real time in front of our face. This is America, where we do everything in terms of our government right out in the open, or at least that's the way it should be. And so as a political junkie, I happen to like to see the debate and the deliberative process being done out in the open. While on the other hand, I do not enjoy the debate and the deliberative process in real time. It's messy. Most people do not understand the process, and when I say most people, I mean most people that are just used to getting their news via a headline or something on Facebook or something on Twitter, and they don't read any context. It's unfortunate we live in a country and a state of a country today where most people are not as concerned about the deliberative process, and what's going on in our government. But most people would just look at what's going on with now McCarthy losing his 6th vote as a very messy proposition. The average Joe just wants the newly controlled Republican Congress to hit the ground running. They want to see Jim Jordan ahead of the Judiciary Committee. They want to make sure that he is going to ask all the tough questions in regards to the Hunter Biden laptop issues. We're going to go into the Afghanistan debacle from last year, a couple years ago, with Joe Biden and the 13 that were killed in Afghanistan as we made our hasty exit. We just want to see all of those things done. But on the other hand, we need a ballsy House Speaker who has no problem pushing a very conservative agenda that motivates the Republican base. Yes, and you need to move and motivate that Republican base, and you need to bring in right-leaning independents to boot. And I really think that it depends on how you look at the whole situation playing out. Are there going to be enough people that are going to remember this whole process 2 years from now? I mean, the attention span of most Americans is pretty short. I want you to think about this. Joe Biden, since the Afghanistan debacle of the summer or late summer of 2020, I guess? No, 2021. He was on a steady decline in terms of approval, right? That's when his approval started to go down immensely after that whole Afghanistan debacle. And it's just been one messy situation after the next. The border situation, I just found out this morning that when the previous pope passed away, that pope essentially said Biden is not going to come to my funeral. I mean, being dead yet speaketh kind of thing. It's just been one messy situation with Biden ever since that whole Afghanistan debacle. But yet, in November of 2022, he didn't have that many losses when it came to the midterms. So why didn't people of both parties look at what was happening with his record and vote accordingly? So again, for the Republicans that are wringing their hands saying, well, in 2 years, the Republicans are going to get really mad at what happened in terms of this process. Really? They didn't really put Joe Biden's feet to the fire or the Democratic Party's feet to the fire in November of 2022. Why in the world would they remember anything, if at all anything, from this whole process that we're seeing played out right in front of our face? So, in essence, on the one hand, I support the process that's happening. On the other hand, I understand that the average Joe doesn't understand it and just wants to see the job that the Republicans pled to do to get done. So in essence, there is one side of me that says we shouldn't settle for Kevin McCarthy. But on the other hand, I don't know how far away from me politically Kevin McCarthy would be. So again, Republicans have been doing that for too long, is settling for a lot of these guys. And if the 15 to 20 who are the holdouts want to see what happens, again, I don't think Steve Scalise is going to come in there. I think the main guy that is spearheading these 15 to 20 is Matt Gaetz. Matt Gaetz came to the House floor the other day, and right after Jim Jordan supported on the House floor the bid of Kevin McCarthy, right afterwards, Matt Gaetz of Florida comes up and says this. Go ahead, Matt.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Florida rise?
To nominate a candidate for Speaker of the House.
The gentleman is recognized.
Well, sometimes we have to do jobs that we don't really want to do. And sometimes we have to do jobs that we are called to do. And so, my colleagues, I rise to nominate the most talented, hardest working member of the Republican conference, who just gave a speech with more vision than we have ever heard from the alternative. I'm nominating Jim Jordan. Jim Jordan is humble, perhaps today humble to a fault. Maybe the right person for the job of Speaker of the House isn't someone who wants it so bad. Maybe the right person for the job of Speaker of the House isn't someone who has sold shares of themselves for more than a decade to get it. Maybe Jim Jordan is the right person for Speaker of the House because he is not beholden to the lobbyists and special interests who have corrupted this place and corrupted this nation under the leadership of both Republicans and Democrats.
So, Matt Gaetz, along with Lauren Boebert in Colorado, Brian Donaldson in Florida, and others, they're the holdouts. And Matt Gaetz is basically a no vote for McCarthy no matter what. I think there's something personal. I don't know what it is, but really, hopefully, think about this. Even if McCarthy does survive, there's still going to be just a bitterness between certain parts of the House with the Speaker. And I would hope they would be able to, for the sake of the country and the conservative agenda, to be able to set those grievances aside in order to govern properly. And so, again, in a sense, the messy process we're witnessing is needful if we're going to have a speaker who can not only boldly proclaim conservative principles, but also happens to believe in those conservative principles. In fact, I would extend the argument from Speaker of the House to the argument made in regards to Ronna McDaniel and Harmeet Dillon for the position of Republican National Committee. You've had Ronna McDaniel in charge of the National Committee for the last several years now, the last several cycles, and obviously now that the November 7th midterms are behind us, a lot of the Republican Party is blaming Ronna McDaniel for the lackluster performance of the Republican Party on November 7th. But again, do Republicans want the status quo as represented by Ronna McDaniel? Or do we want a bold conservatism that motivates its base? And some would argue that would be with Harmeet Dillon. And I don't know. I know we have a record with Ronna. We don't have a record with Harmeet, but we also know what Harmeet stands for. And maybe we need to have new leadership in the Republican National Committee. So again, let's watch this play out, both with the Speaker of the House and the Republican National Committee, and Lord willing, the process will work out for solid conservatism in the end. But I wanted to set aside just for a moment this whole notion of the Speaker of the House, because obviously that's playing out. And I think they're going to probably end up adjourning today after the sixth vote that McCarthy has lost. And I don't know, I mean, literally they could keep going on and on and on with this for 100 votes. But I think it was Einstein or whoever it was that said doing the same thing over and over again but expecting a different outcome. It looks like that with each one of these votes, it seems as if McCarthy is losing ground and not gaining ground. And we don't live in a democracy where we say things like, well, I have the most votes, so therefore I am afforded this job. We live in a republic, a representative republic, and that's not how we reason things out. So McCarthy cannot just say, I have the most votes, so therefore I should be afforded this position. That should not be the case. But the fact is, there's another news cycle that's happening that's kind of alongside this whole speaker issue that just popped up yesterday. But if you guys were watching the game on Monday, which I don't normally watch football at all, but I'd like to just comment a little bit on this whole Damar Hamlin issue with the Buffalo Bills and the cardiac arrest that he suffered Monday night. I watched where that hit occurred, and yeah, listen, I'm a 5'8" white guy. If any of these guys came up to me with half of the tenacity that they do when they tackle somebody, yeah, I'd be hurt. But these guys are bred and practiced up to do what they do. And to me, to a casual looker who doesn't necessarily always watch football, it did not look to me as if that hit was anything out of the ordinary. But again, I'm gonna go in this direction real quick, but I'm gonna ask Matt to come in here and talk a little bit about this, because Matt obviously is more of an expert on football than I am. But Matt, I'm sure you watched the game on Monday, and what was your thoughts when you saw him, Damar, getting that hit?
Yeah, I mean, in live time, real time, I thought nothing of it. I saw that he had collapsed, which was alarming, but when I was watching the game, it's kind of in the background of what I was doing around the house, and I figured it'd be a 5-minute situation where they got him up off the field, and then they continued the game, and then it went into 10 minutes, and then it was 20, and by the time you knew it, it almost was a full hour before they ended up calling the game completely.
Yeah.
When you watch that hit, it doesn't look, like you said, even close to half the tenacity and as hard hitting as they normally are in the NFL. So it was very surprising to hear that he did suffer cardiac arrest and that they needed to perform CPR and AED on him on the field.
Yeah. Now, in all your years of watching football, and again, you watch it more religiously than I do, obviously you've seen your share of tackles in football games down through the years. How many of them do you remember where the guy that's being tackled is suffering from cardiac arrhythmia or whatever they want to call it, where they just had a heart attack? How many of them have you remembered where that happened?
0.
Oh, I didn't think it was very many at all.
Never have ever seen that in my life. Never have heard of that happening. I mean, we've heard of a player dying on the field, but not really as a direct result of a hit to the chest or, upper cavity area the way that Damar Hamlin was.
Isn't the current iteration of what they wear in terms of the football tackle gear, don't they have a portion of their chest covered?
Yes. The shoulder pads go down below, right about the nipple line.
Yeah.
And some a little higher, some a little lower, depends on what they prefer as a player. But they do have some protection up there.
Yeah. And do you think that that's ample protection from some of these solid hits that these guys incur out there? Or do you think it's, they're just trying to satisfy the guys out there that say, hey, we got to keep you guys safe?
I would say it's ample based on the risk that these guys understand they're getting into.
Yeah.
I mean, to be playing in the NFL, you understand that you are not only putting every limb on the line, but your life as well. I mean, we've seen that over the years with the discovery and research on CTE caused by brain trauma from concussions.
Yeah.
And the same goes for hits like this. I mean, unless you want to put them in a full metal armor suit, this is about as good as it's going to get, and it's the risk that these guys take when they sign the dotted line.
I remember a few years ago, was it Will Smith that put out the movie Concussion?
Yes.
Where it was around that time when there was this whole big uprising about football players in particular suffering from these hits, getting hit over and over again, and then, end up suffering a concussion or something like that, and going into their life not feeling all that great. But it seems like that was one issue, and that was less than a year of a big deal, culminating in that movie. But I have noticed, and again, Matt, you can probably talk about this. Do you remember a time in the last decade, as compared to the last couple of years, where very strong, young, virulent men that are training for their particular sport that they are effective in just end up having a cardiac arrest or dying suddenly on the field or in practice or what have you? Does this have a precedent at all with 10 years ago?
Never. No.
I don't think so. Thanks, Matt, for your input on this, because I am going to go there, folks. I want to just take a couple minutes and talk a little bit about the notion of Damar having a booster. It was just brought to my attention just before the show this afternoon. Is Dr. Benjamin Eidelman, which I'm assuming is Damar's physician. Here is a tweet from 10:40 p.m., January 2nd, 2023. It says, I recently administered Damar Hamlin's COVID booster on 12/26. And as a medical professional, I can assure the public he passed all screenings with flying colors. I'm in contact with USMC staff and will provide any assistance to them. And then it says every one of our docs say we are fine. And again, all I can tell you is I hope that this tweet is legit. I hope somebody on the right didn't just produce this. But evidently this Dr. Benjamin Eidelman does exist. I quickly Googled him up. And yeah, he's connected with the football player. But again, can't we ask the question, is it possible? Why is it wrong to ask if Damar received a booster shot for the China virus the day before the game? Now we know it was just a few days before the game. So this suggests that he's already been vaccinated. He's got the booster shot. And here we have another instance where a seemingly healthy, virulent, tough guy just ends up, thankfully, not dying suddenly. According to what I've been hearing, the vitals are good. But just having a cardiac arrest from what seems to me, as a novice, a pretty natural tackle, And on top of all that, did you hear about the Orange County water polo coach who died suddenly just a day or two ago? When we come back from the break, I want to kind of talk about this a little bit more. I don't want to get all conspiracy-minded here, but there's enough information for us to say, you know what, there's a consensus here. Let's at least analyze the data of what we have. So when we come back on Politics in the Pulpit, I want to talk a little bit about the jab and whether or not maybe the jab has some sort of connection to some of these instances that are happening out on the field. As we come back here with Pastor Jerry Cook, your holy host, on Politics in the Pulpit on your hometown station, 98.1 FM and AM 1220. We are back here on Politics and the Pulpit, back live for our first show of 2023. Good to have you here. This is your holy host, Pastor Jerry Cook, and you are listening here on your hometown station, AM 1220 and 98.1 FM. It is raining in Southern California, and Representative Kevin McCarthy is still not the speaker. And when we last left you, we were talking about all kinds of conspiracy theories about the vaccination status of Damar Hamlin. When we last left you, I read a tweet that came out at 10:40 p.m. on January 2nd, 2023, from seemingly is Damar Hamlin's doctor. And it says, I recently administered Damar Hamlin's COVID booster on 12/26, and as a medical professional, I can assure the public he passed all screenings with flying colors. I am in contact with the UCMC staff and will provide any assistance to them. And again, assuming this tweet is legitimate, then we can conclude that Damar Hamlin was not only boosted on 12/26, but had received the coronavirus vaccination prior to this as well. So again, why is it wrong to ask if Damar received a booster and if that booster or if any of those vaccinations had anything to do at all with what happened to him on Monday night? Which, again, from a novice point of view, seemed like a normal tackle. Not as hard as some of the tackles maybe I've seen in the past. But again, when we, at the bottom of the hour, we talked about this Orange County water polo coach. He died suddenly just a day or so ago. He was 28 years old. His name was Francisco Gonzalez. He passed away, according to his own family, and this is on GoFundMe, I think, without any warnings or signs. That's what his family says. He just died suddenly. Now, I'm not saying that people have never died suddenly. There have been billions of people that have lived in the world for thousands of years, and I'm sure there have been a lot of people who have, quote, died suddenly. So I'm not saying that this is a relatively new phenomenon. But I am saying that it seems like there is a frequency in the last several years, I would say the last 2 years, 2.5 years, where this died suddenly phenomenon seems to be happening with more frequency. So again, can we ask if he was vaxxed and boosted? If not, why not? I don't know why that's a problem. Why wouldn't a curious journalist want to know any of these questions? I have here in my formerly nicotine-stained fingers a report published November 26th of 2021 that says this: at least 69 athletes collapse in 1 month, many of them dead. Here's the subtitle. The reports of athletes who suddenly collapse have been increasing noticeably lately. Heart problems such as heart inflammation are often the cause. One of the known life-threatening side effects of COVID vaccines, which even the manufacturers themselves warn against. And I'm just going to read a few things here. The current phenomenon is also evident if you simply look on Wikipedia. And by the way, I'm not saying that that's the repository of truth, folks, because obviously you can go in there and you can change all kinds of things on Wikipedia yourself. But he's simply saying, if you simply look on Wikipedia at the list of footballers who have collapsed and died, the year 2021 stands out with 13 entries so far, and that was as of November of 2021. In no other year mentioned have more footballers died during a game. And this list goes back, according to this article, to the year 1889. And I'm assuming that most of the footballers back in 1889 were not as decked out as they are today in terms of the safety precautions and the gear that they're wearing. So it really is a historical event here in many ways. And again, the mainstream media seems to be curiously uninterested in this major global story. And this article goes on to cite several individuals. In October, cardiac and circulatory events on the sports field went through the roof. It says here, below is a shockingly long list of athletes who collapsed last month from heart problems or circulatory disorders such as strokes. Unfortunately, some of these incidents were fatal for the often very young athletes. We're talking about people below the age of 30, predominantly below the age of 25. And there are several individuals here from several parts of the globe, from guys in Italy. Here's a guy from Argentina. If I'm not mistaken, during the World Cup events, within a 48-hour period, I think one reporter and somebody else ended up dying. They were all under 30 years of age, all of them. None of them were asked about their vaccination status. Again, they died suddenly. There was really no reason given for why they died. But there are people here from Argentina. There are people here from Iceland, from Mexico. I mean, from all over the place. And all of these guys have two things in common. They're very young, and they were all vaccinated. So again, I just want to know why we don't have a curious media that wants to ask any of these questions. It would seem to me that if you were at all curious about these things, then you would want to know. And again, I am one that did not get vaccinated. And the reason why I didn't get vaccinated is, as I was telling our board operator here before the show, I don't want to just be a guinea pig for everybody and their brother. I know there was a lot of hysteria in 2020. We did not know everything that we know today about this whole virus. I understand churches shut down, restaurants shut down, stores shut down. People were doing this social distance thing. If you didn't wear a mask, that you were considered like some sort of Sasquatch or an alien. Of course, I thought the exact same of the people that were wearing one. And so when the vaccines came out, rolling out under Trump and then continued under Biden, everybody was just excited to get in line and get vaccinated. But I don't think we were asking the hard questions initially, like, have we had the opportunity to sufficiently test out these vaccines? The answer to that is no. According to what I have heard statistically before 2020, most vaccines had test runs of like 2 to 8 years, depending on the vaccine. This did not have a 2-year run or an 8-year run for that matter. These things were produced in a mass scale, and then they were administered. And some of you would probably argue, well, in late 2020, there was a huge downplay of virus in the summer and fall of 2020. And obviously the vaccinations must have contributed to that. And that's probably true. But at the same time, you also if you're into that kind of data, you also have to be curious enough to look at the data of those that have died suddenly from those who have received the boosters and the vaccinations. So again, I don't know why you would cite one side of data that supports your crap, but yet you won't cite other data that kind of questions some of what you're talking about. So again, here is what I have to say about all this. If the China virus vaccines are indeed causing some of these cardiac issues, then shouldn't we get to the bottom of this before we start encouraging, as Biden continues to do relentlessly, that people get vaccinated? This was a semi-big issue in our church, Freedom's Way Baptist, shameless plug there, back in 2020, because we had a bunch of misinformation and disinformation being spread among some of our congregants, saying that if you got the vaccine, that you were getting the mark of the beast, 666 and all that kind of stuff. And I thought, that's so silly. It's not that. It's just a vaccine. But on the other hand, we had other people saying, well, if you got the vaccine, then you were less than, you weren't important, you weren't really trusting Christ. All I can tell you is this. I had to squash that as quickly as I possibly could among the sheep in our congregation and basically say this. We believe in free will. If you want to get the vaccine and suffer through the repercussions of what happens from getting the vaccine, that is your choice. If you do not want to get the vaccine and just trust God and go through life, then bless God, do that as well. But nobody should be at each other's throats over this issue. Now we are almost 3 years removed from that. And now we have substantive data that suggests that something is not working with the vaccines connected with certain people. Now again, obviously people aren't dropping dead like everywhere. So then it must be certain people with certain blood types or certain immune compromise or whatever is going on, that something in that vaccine is not jiving with them and it's causing all of these issues. Now, I'm going to just throw this out there just for the sake of throwing it out there, but if you're interested in more of this type of information, then you need to check out a short documentary called Died Suddenly. If you're going to look for it on Facebook, you won't find it. You can't find it on Twitter at the moment, and you can't find it on a lot of other platforms. But if you are a subscriber to Rumble, you can watch this an hour and 15-minute documentary called Died Suddenly. You say, what's that about? Well, it's about what the title suggests, about people that died suddenly. And it is a documentary that seeks to interview a bunch of morticians who have tried to embalm people who have died suddenly of what seems to be either the vaccine or COVID, who have been administered the vaccine after getting COVID, where they're finding that they cannot get the embalming fluid through the veins and then realize that in the veins they've coagulated, all this blood is coagulated, and they're pulling out stringy pieces of vein, which is all kind of coagulated and looks like a giant piece of yarn. You say, well, that's weird. All I can tell you is I looked up some of the names of these morticians. They are legitimately morticians. These aren't actors portraying morticians. These are genuine morticians. There is public record. You can look up the guys' names if you watch the movie on Rumble. But again, have you ever noticed this? And I'm just going to throw this out there as well. Have you noticed the major uptick in cremations in the last 3 years as opposed to just normal burials? Can we cue the X-Files music on this right here? Because, seriously, because there has been a huge uptick in cremations. And some would argue on the fiscal side, well, the reason why is because it's a lot cheaper to burn the body in cremation than to bury the body. And I totally get the fiscal impacts of that, because both of my parents were cremated, and their major argument for cremation was, we want to make sure that this doesn't fiscally impact you guys. And these are from two people that had burial plots at Rose Hills. If you're from Southern California, you know exactly where Rose Hills is. But they argued from the fiscal standpoint. And that's what most people would say. Well, it's fiscally more responsible to just cremate the body. Well, just in the last 3 years, the uptick of cremation has been amazing. You say why? Because you don't have to have an autopsy. You don't have to go through a mortician to have the body run through the veins with the embalming fluid. And so they never have to find out what the actual cause of death is, or the doctors or whomever can write whatever they want on the death certificate. And again, I'm not suggesting that that's happening, but at the same time, who knows what is happening, right? So again, you can't find this died suddenly on other platforms because they consider what died suddenly is talking about. They deem the information given in this film as spreading COVID disinformation. If you live in California, there is one of the 5 new maniac laws that Governor Hairgel signed into law was this thing about doctors not being able to properly talk to their patients about COVID vaccinations. And if those doctors say anything like, well, the COVID vaccinations could cause this, even though the vaccination people themselves basically say there's a possibility you could get this problem if you get the vaccination, we can't even articulate that. According to this new law in California, their medical license could be revoked, and they can't practice medicine anymore. This is silly. Why in the world can't we ask questions? We live in a day where you can Google something so quickly and get an answer so quickly, but yet we can't ask questions? It's a strange thing to me. I'll give you a Bible verse, 1 Thessalonians chapter 5, verse 21. The Apostle Paul said this to the church at Thessalonica. He said, prove, test all things, hold fast that which is good. What does that mean? Well, it means to test all things, hold fast to that which is good. Well, the Bible tells us to question things. I know you secularists out there are saying, no, you Christians, you just take whatever the Bible says. All I'm telling you is this, the Bible tells us to question things. And you secularists are saying we can't question certain things. Of course, you guys can question everything you guys want to question. But for some reason, a Christian or a non-Christian for that matter, we can't question something like a vaccine that we're going to be putting into our bodies that has not been tested for years and years. It has only been on the market for months, sometimes weeks. And you're going to make us put that into our bodies? Again, at some point, curious, inquiring minds should want to say, why are you so keen on doing this on a global level? Now, I got a few thoughts about what I think is happening. And again, I'm not a doctor and I'm not a scientist, but I am a preacher, so that makes me mad in some ways. But I do know that the left's goal of the last several years, especially with this green movement, has been population reduction. Now, again, do we have that music there, Matt? Go ahead and as I'm talking, cue the strange music there, because it is very clear to me that there is something nefarious and odd going on. Right, man?
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. You can't hear it, but the suspenseful music is on.
Okay,
Here, I'll give you a second, right?
Good. That's good. Yeah, that's great. Now, you guys out there that are listening, that have a brain that God gave you, haven't you thought about this? I mean, isn't it possible that one way that the globalist, leftist, cultist, atheist out there, in attempting to bring down population from blowing up, is let's just kill some people? Again, I don't know. I'm not certain of that. But who knows? I know that there's some people out there. You know what else I just read something the other day, that people right now are the unhappiest they've ever been. I don't know what study that is right now. I'll find it in a second. People are unhappy right now. They're not having children, and they're not having sex. Well, that's exciting. I mean, that's a trifecta right there. That's a no-no, right? So if you're not having sex, especially within the confines of marriage, then you're not having babies. And if you're not having babies, then the next generation isn't guaranteed. But in reality, there are some on the left that actually like the fact that some countries penalize you for having more than 1 or 2 kids. Why? Because we don't want to bring in a bunch of kids and have a global explosion. You say, who would believe that? It wouldn't be anybody on the conservative side. It wouldn't be anybody on the Christian side. It would be on the leftist, lunatic, fringe side that believes in all of the green crap that they spew from their mouths. They're the guys that are actually far more conspiratorial and want that conspiracy to play out in real time more than people like ourselves who identify as believers in Christ or those that are politically conservative. And they say, I think you're being conspiratorial, preacher. All I can tell you is this. You better come up with new conspiracies because the old ones are coming true. I mean, it's just weird how we're living. It seems to be in a Twilight Zone episode where strange and odd things are seeming to come to pass. And I think the best way for a conspiracy to maintain itself is for those on the right to talk about it and expose it for what it is, because the left needs those guys to say that so they can point to those guys as conspiracy nuts. In reality, both sides synergistically need each other for both sides to survive. The left needs us to speak about the conspiracy out in the open so the left can say we're nuts, and then we talk about the conspiracy as being true so then we can look at the left and say, see, it's happening in real time. So in reality, it's a weird, odd, synergistic relationship. And again, the Bible does not tell us to blindly believe and trust all things. We're to prove, we're to test all things. And so I just want to know, I would like to see some curious journalists not have their job ripped from them and go into this vaccine situation and just figure out what is going on. I just want the truth to prevail. When we come back, we'll have a few shameless plugs here on Politics and the Pulpit. Thanks for listening into my conspiratorial rant right there. But when we come back here on your hometown station, we'll have a few shameless plugs. You're listening again to Politics and the Pulpit with your holy host, Pastor Jerry Cook, on AM 1220 and 98.1 FM.
It's like no other station I've ever listened to. It's great.
Your hometown station.
All right, we're back here on Politics and the Pulpit. Excuse me, my tongue got in the way of my lip. Here on your hometown station, 98.1 FM and AM 1220. I'm your holy host, Pastor Jerry Cook, the pastor of the Freedom's Way Baptist Church here in Santa Clarita. As of March of this year, I'll be celebrating my 21st anniversary in the ministry, 21 years at the same church. And guess what? Some of the same people are still with me almost 21 years later, so praise the Lord for that. I want to give you a few shameless plugs here as we are going to be looking towards a pretty busy January. Again, this is our first show of the new year, and we're so glad to be with you live back in the studio. Next week, on January 11th, here at 2 o'clock on Politics in the Pulpit, we will have Congressman Mike Garcia calling us in from the swamp, and we're actually going to be talking about, and I am actually going to be promoting early voting. I know you're probably thinking, oh no, Pastor Cook is compromised. No, I'm one in the past who believed that early voting is bad, and I believe in a vote the day of kind of thing, and I still kind of believe that in my heart. Don't get me wrong, but I do think the Democratic advantage is early voting, and so I think we need to play the game that we have instead of playing the game that we wish we had, and so unfortunately, we live in California. The game is early voting. And we should not just let the Democrats have that advantage. I really believe that we need to take full advantage of that as conservatives. And on the one hand, I remember talking to the congressman a few months ago saying, I think that Fetterman in Pennsylvania was a good reason to argue against early voting. But at the same time, from the Democratic perspective, he was probably a great reason to vote early so you could get your vote in and counted before you saw his atrocious debate performance against Dr. Oz. So again, there's pros and cons there, but the congressman will be with us next Wednesday, and we'll be discussing early voting. And then on January 26th, the last Wednesday of January, we are going to have creation speaker Russ Miller call in, and he'll be with us at least for almost the whole hour, talking about Darwin, dinosaurs, evolution, and creationism. And the reason why we're going to have him in on the 26th is because on January 29th, and here's the shameless plug, folks, Freedom's Way Baptist Church will be hosting creation speaker Russ Miller with creationministries.org. They are based out of the Flagstaff area there in Arizona. And I have known Russ Miller for, I say, 16, 17 years now. We support him as a ministry from our church. And every 2 years we have Russ come out, and he really helps our folks to put things in perspective. We believe in the Genesis account. And if you are someone who believes in the Genesis account, or maybe if you have questions about the Genesis account, again, I'm a guy that believes in questions. If you have questions, you can still come to the Freedom's Way Baptist Church with those questions. We don't shun you because you have questions. But Russ Miller will be there from 9:15 in the morning on Sunday, January 29th, 10:30 a.m. for the main worship service on Sunday morning, and then 5 p.m. Where then he's going to stick around afterwards and answer some questions that you might have. And so listen in on January 26th as Russ Miller will be here on Politics and the Pulpit. I think you'll find that very interesting. Also, don't forget our buddy here on the platform, Matt Frieda, is going to be in studio live tomorrow with Out of Bounds. I'm sure probably talking a little bit about this Damar Hamlin situation. What's on tap tomorrow?
Yeah, we will definitely be talking about that. I'd like to also talk about some terrible, trashy reality TV shows, so I might get into that as well.
Oh, good. Well, there's the shameless plug there from Out of Bounds. And so, again, if you're out there driving, please be careful. I'm going to be heading back up to my home in just a few minutes here, so be safe as you're driving out in these safe roads here in Southern California. And next week, again, Congressman Mike Garcia, get around the radio, tell somebody about the show. This is your holy host signing out on your hometown station.